Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Thursday, December 28th, 2017, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, here with your daily dose of happy, and it is cold here in Connecticut. It's the middle of the afternoon, and it's 10 degrees Fahrenheit. I even looked it up, Wendy. That's minus 12 Celsius. That makes it sound even colder.
Yes, it does.
So I'm working really hard because the AccuWeather says that we're going to be in this cold snap for another 7 to 10 days. So I'm saying, nope, not going to accept that. I'm going to start working on warming this place up because this is colder than I want.
Well, you know, being in Texas, it's never as cold here as it is for you.
True.
But, you know, every now and then it's really fun to wear my big fuzzy slippers and my big, you know, like bulky sweaters, which is what I'm talking in right now.
Uh-huh.
So I want you to picture my big pink fuzzy slippers.
Pink? Oh, okay. That's cute. I like that.
With lamb's wool keeping my toesies warm.
Oh, that's warm. That stuff is really warm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, your toes are not going to get cold. No doubt about that. Your ankles maybe, but not your toes. So anyway, we were kind of casting around for topics today, and lately I'd been kind of reaching out on Facebook because there are a number of law of attraction groups there, and so I was checking them out. And there was one in particular that had a lot of interesting discussion, so I've been spending some time on it the last week or so. It's called the Law of Attraction Changed My Life Group. And just because of some of the stuff I've seen posted on there, some of it is, for people who are very new. Some of it is like off the wall. Some of it is just plain funny. I figured if nothing else, that would give us a good topic today because it would just be fun. I mean, it's a fun group just to sit in and watch and contribute to and so forth. And some of the stuff that they come up with is just really good stuff, and some of it, like I said, is a little off the wall. So. Let me just start. You could actually just go to any of the posts in the group, but I'm just going to start at the top of a page that I came to when I logged in about a half an hour ago, and this is what the page was showing me.
Perfect, because I was just going to suggest, why don't you read some of the posts and we'll bounce around what we think about it.
Now, the first one that I'm seeing here is by someone who is French but speaking English, and she writes. Well, basically she says, if you're skeptical about LOA and how your mind energy works in manifesting the life you want, let me tell you that I've manifested conversing in French, the love of my life, and specifically someone who loves travel as much as I do, lived in 3 countries, visited 14 together, and a baby. I have to admit, That's an interesting list. Now, she says in 2013, she was stuck in a cycle of terrible relationships and beginning to feel hopeless. Until mid-2017, she was having trouble conceiving a baby, and now she's 8 months pregnant. So anything is possible if you believe. If what you want hasn't manifested yet, and you've done all the steps needed to achieve it, because action is important too, just be patient and believe that it is coming. And she got a lot of congratulations and so forth on that. So that's one kind of thing that you get a number of posts on, people sharing their wins, which is great. I think it's good that they're sharing their wins. And I'm glad.
Absolutely.
I mean, we need to share more wins in life. We don't do it often enough. So, okay, that's one kind. Second one, this is the kind of thing you get a lot of. Well, actually, this is sort of a carry-on of the same type of thing. It's, I want to lose 11 more pounds. Instead of criticizing my body, I bought pants a size smaller today because they're going to fit perfectly by the end of February. And then she writes, I'm grateful for being able to choose what I eat. I'm grateful for being healthy and able to work out. I'm grateful for all my weight loss buddies across the world who give me advice and support. So, once again, using the form, just trying to do their own thing. Again, that's cool. That's fine. Now, the third one, this one, I look at and I've seen this kind of thing a lot. And maybe you have an idea of why this shows up. But I see a lot of people posting pictures usually of like a clock or a cell phone or something that has any kind of a digital clock on it showing the time 11:11, 1111. And they're fascinated by it. And in this particular case, they have a picture of a microwave oven that's got a clock on it. It says 1111. And the person posts, who saw it? With a big smiley face. And I'm thinking, what? What are they talking about? Even Joel has done this too. Joel has posted pictures of his cell phone showing the time 11:11. And I don't understand what the whole thing about 11:11 is. Why are people so fascinated by it? Do you know?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily just 11:11. because I've heard people in Abraham workshops talk about how they wake up every night at 3:33, or other things where there's like repetitive numbers like 12:12, etc. And Abraham, I think, does a good job of expressing it and talking about what that's about. Is, first of all, if you think it's cool, then you've now given focus to it.
Right.
And so you will now, keep waking up at that hour, or you'll keep seeing the clock at that hour. Now, before I started seeing all these 11:11s, my birthday is October 14th, which is 10:14.
Mm-hmm.
And when digital clocks started, being, like when I started using more digital clocks versus, analog clocks, I would just, if I saw the clock at 10:14, something inside me went, oh, cool, that's my birthday.
Okay.
And I guess it started to happen often enough because I got to tell you, probably 4 to 5 times in a week, I catch the digital clock at 10:14. And I just kind of say, it's like my own private moment of the universe celebrating my birth, or the universe celebrating me.
Okay,
and
I
so
like
because
that.
I've been focusing on that for years, decades, I see 10:14 on the clock a lot.
Sure. Yeah.
Where I don't see the 11:11 or the 3:33 or other things like that so much because I'm really dialed in to 10:14. That's
Right.
my magic number.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But like my little sister, her favorite number is 13.
Okay.
She sees 13s all over the place.
Yeah.
But, Abraham really says it really is a matter of whatever you choose to give meaning to,
Mm-hmm.
and then what you focus on, you get more of it.
That's certainly true.
And, haven't you had the phenomenon where all of a sudden you see your odometer is about to go to 100,000 miles even, and you're in 99, 98, 99, 99, and you can't wait to see it turn?
Oh, yeah, sure. I just don't post about it.
Well, but Abraham says that we as humans, for whatever reason, and they don't give us a reason, we are fascinated by things like that, and we especially love it when all of a sudden we look at our odometer when it goes to one of those, milestone numbers, and Abraham will say, "That's child's play." Child's play. It's like, you think that's a big deal? Oh, that's child's play compared to what we can do on your behalf.
And actually, I could also tie it into the physical brain, too, because we have a little piece of our brain called the ascending reticular activation system, which is quite a name when you think about it. But it's this little tiny piece of the brain near the brainstem, which you probably know about it. It's basically the filtering mechanism in the brain, because our 5 senses get so much information every day that if literally we had to process all of it consciously, we'd be overwhelmed and we would be autistic. That's really what autistic people endure. They don't have the filtering in place. So it's a good thing to have the ARAS in place. On the other hand, the ARAS is also programmable, and it's programmable both intentionally and unintentionally. So when you start looking for 1014 and you focus on 1014, you're basically programming it to say, filter in anything that's 1014. If it's not 1014, I'm not interested, so filter that out. But filter it in if you see 1014. So you see 1014 all the time. So that's the physical reason why we're constantly seeing the same numbers over again. So I certainly understand why they're seeing the 1111 or whatever it is they're focusing on. I just don't know. I don't fully get it why they're interested in it. But good for them for seeing it.
And I'm with you there. There's a commonality in that many people focus on that and they think it's really cool.
Yeah.
But when I hear someone focusing on it, I hear Abraham's words. That's child's play. Not at all to minimize the fascination, but just to acknowledge and recognize that our universe is capable of really big things, and that's small by comparison.
To me, the ARAS thing is much more interesting because it shows just how influenced we are by our own little piece of brain that does the filtering for us. So, and for me, the classic example is we're sitting in the same room, and I say to you now, here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to see red. And, of course, the first thing you do is see something red in the room because it has nothing to do with whether I told you to do it or not. You just heard red, and instantly you start seeing something red, right? Well, that's the ARAS kicking in. It's the same kind of phenomenon as you just buy yourself a gray Honda Civic, and immediately everywhere you go, you see gray Honda Civics because you are now programmed to see gray Honda Civics. That's an interesting phenomenon. And that to me, it's not worthy perhaps of doing a show on it, but I might spend 5 minutes on it because it's kind of fun. I just don't see the other part.
But you so it's kind of like, I know you and I have talked about this offline about how the universe doesn't recognize not, the word not. And that to me is like, that to me I totally understand, and I also learned it when I was in my NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming courses, which is, and it also lines up perfectly with Abraham saying we live in a world of inclusion,
right,
not exclusion. So I'll now define what that's about. So whenever you say look for red, or like you just mentioned the word red, if you highlight it in a way like, okay, I'm going to say the word red, I'll bet you're now seeing red. Well, your mind has to focus on how you interpret red in order to like even know what you've just said. And then now we're focused on it. And so now it's a natural thing for your ARS to start filtering out everything so that all you see is red.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. That's what happens.
So if somebody says, do not run in the street, well, in order to understand that sentence, you have to actually focus on or interpret what is the street, so I know what not to do.
Mm-hmm. And what is running in the street.
By the time you focused on the street, oftentimes you've forgotten about the not, and the little kid has already run into the street.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, how many parents have experienced that? Don't do that. The first thing they do is that.
Right. So if you really want someone to not do something, don't use the words of what you don't want them to do.
Oh, yeah.
Use the affirmative, like stay on the grass.
Yeah, that's good.
Because in order to know what that means, a child's mind or an adult's mind has to find the interpretation internally for what is grass.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're focusing on grass.
Yes.
You know, and so to me, don't think of a pink elephant. It's like, it's so, you can't not think of a pink elephant. That's
right.
not something we say every day. And all of a sudden we start, like right now, I wasn't really conjuring up a pink elephant, but I was conjuring up an elephant, like immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was hearing an elephant call. As soon as you said pink elephant, I heard an elephant call. I'm serious, that's what I heard.
And that makes sense, because you're auditory.
I'm auditory, right.
So for you to know an elephant, you had to create the interpretation of what is elephant. And you heard that sound. Which now I've just heard that sound, too. Cool. I mean, we can, like, throw out all sorts of things, and people can, like, see, hear, feel, taste, touch, particular things. But it takes as little as just saying it for your mind to figure out what's the interpretation of that thing, whatever that thing is.
Which actually I find to be very encouraging, because it shows just how easy it is for us to consciously program our own subconscious minds. The filtering mechanism gives us the way to do that. That's really good.
That's cool. I like that perspective.
Yeah.
You're right. It can be very, very easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And once I understand it that way, I mean, early on, I had a lot of trouble with the idea of programming my own mind. Not because I was against it. I just didn't think I could do it. I just didn't think it was within my reach. Now, it's like, oh, shoot, there's nothing difficult about programming my own mind. So I've gone 180 degrees in the opposite direction. But at first, it seemed impossible. Now that I understand
the truth is, you're programming your mind pretty much 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Because every thought.
You just probably didn't know the mechanics behind it.
That's right, yeah. And in fact, that's kind of a similar thing to a comment that I've made in a lot of the topics I've seen in the Law of Attraction group here on Facebook, that people are asking questions at various times about how do I attract this, how do I attract that, why can't I attract it? And often I'll start off by saying, well, you're attracting every moment that you're consciously awake, and you have been all your life, so you're actually an expert at it. Don't feel bad. The only difference is you're just trying to do it more deliberately, and that's good. That's a good thing.
Exactly. And, to me, that's what the, quote, law of attraction buzz has been about for the last number of years, which it's not a matter of does the law of attraction work? It's how do I get it to work in a deliberate way so that I can manifest my stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what more and more people are learning. So I think that's one of the reasons I like the group, the fact that you have a whole group of people, and a fair number of people, like, I don't know, something like 20,000 people are in the group. So a fair number of people have at least expressed interest in, trying to do this very thing. That's a good thing. Now, the next post, this is an interesting one. Every once in a while, actually often throughout the day, you get people posting about one particular idea. They'll just say, how many people think this? How many people like that? That sort of thing. And this particular person shared a post where they were basically asking, what book has influenced you the most? Well, you can imagine they've had a huge number of replies to their post. And the range of books is really interesting. You'll be happy to know that one of the people posted 5 love languages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. And now, of course, the reason why that's cool is because on yesterday's show we talked about Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people posting, like The Secret and The Power of Now. One person said AA. I thought that was interesting. The most influential book in their life was about Alcoholics Anonymous. Another one, The Power of Receiving, You Were Born Rich, Miracles Now, Think and Grow Rich, The Magic, A New Earth. Oh, I love this one, Illusions by Richard Bach. I didn't know anybody ever knew that book because that was like from 50 years ago, but that's one of my favorite novels, is Illusions. Let's see what else. Oh, I was mentioning this to you off air. Somebody posted The Fountainhead, and I saw that, and I just burst out laughing. And most listeners probably have no idea what The Fountainhead is. The Fountainhead is a novel written by Ayn Rand back in the 1940s. And what's funny about including it in the list is she would have been mortified to be included in anything having to do with spiritualism, because that was just...
Is she a fiction writer or a self-help writer? Or
Rand was a fiction writer who wrote with political intent. She was very conservative in her values. Her basic theme, well, there were a number of themes that she carried, but the most prevalent theme that she carried throughout her novels was the idea that the producers in life, the people who build the big stuff, the people who make the biggest changes in life are the most oppressed. And in fact, she wrote another book called Atlas Shrugged, in which all the producers in society go on strike. So that gives you an idea of where she's coming from. But anything that was not what she called objective, she was very much into being objective. In fact, she invented a philosophy called objectivism. And objectivism is simply the belief that everything in life that is truly real is only real if it can be viewed objectively. If it's subjective, then it's not real. So she was very much against anything spiritual. That was all mysticism from her viewpoint. So here she is, her book being included in a group about the law of attraction, and I just burst out laughing because, she would have been mortified. She would have been absolutely mortified that it was included here.
And, of course, when somebody's, didn't you say the question was, what book have you been influenced by the most?
Right.
Or something like that?
Right.
Okay. So it could even be it's probably for reasons that you and I would never be able to even speculate.
Oh, I think I could speculate. I was actually interested in Rand early on in my life. So I know her novels well. And I think I can understand why somebody would say they were influenced by him. It's just that the influence really had nothing to do specifically with the law of attraction. It had to do with political beliefs and beliefs about Rand supporters are very much into, like I said, conservative belief systems, very conservative belief systems, and I would say even unhealthily conservative systems. But
so what you're saying
it's very
is,
powerful.
It's
for people who are into that. It's a very powerful antidote to what they consider to be a huge influx of more liberal propaganda that's out there. It's like the antidote to all that. So they become very fervent believers in it. So I can see how somebody would feel very influenced by it.
So what I'm kind of getting is that even though it is a law of attraction platform, it doesn't mean that everything that people think about is law of attraction.
Exactly.
Because this individual obviously thought that book had a huge influence on their life.
That's right.
And they weren't thinking about it in terms of law of attraction or not law of attraction.
That's correct. Exactly. Right. So you have to really approach a group like this with a very open mind and just be willing to kind of go with anything that comes your way, which can be a challenge. That can be tough sometimes. You have to kind of.
But I think that's the name of Facebook to me.
Well, sure, yeah.
Like you never know what you're going to see on Facebook, and it may have absolutely no relating whatsoever to the original comment or thread.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And by the way, speaking of Facebook and likes and so forth and sharing. I just want to take a moment to remind you, if you like what you're hearing here, please share it. And you share it on social media because we're trying very much to get more and more listeners aware of the LOA Today platform and the LOA Today podcast. And it's working. We are getting more and more people every day, so that's great. But just take a moment to share it if you're enjoying this because that just helps us to grow and helps more and more people get exposed to the very positive daily dose of happy that they get with LOA Today. So that's my commercial message.
Yes, and if one of our listeners feels like jumping in and joining our conversation, they can do that by dialing 860-264-5432, and we would welcome your call.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, we love it when we have people call in. In fact, we had, for you and I, we had our first one last Friday, and that was really exciting. So by all means, please do call in. We love it.
Wes, if you're listening, you were our first caller.
That's right.
We love you for it.
So anyway, moving on to the next post here. The next one was interesting in that it brought up one of those little tricky points about LOA that the person was asking about. They were trying to get some advice on it. And I'll just read it. It says, a little advice, please. All of last year, I feel like I tricked myself into what I thought was coming for me. The date has gone, and what I manifested didn't arrive. Interesting phrasing. I think maybe she might be somebody who speaks no, she's from the UK, so I don't know what it is. That's just interesting phrasing. Anyway, she says, I know in my heart it's because I didn't really believe it was coming. So my question is, do I take down the things I manifested with the past date on which it didn't arrive?
So did you post a response to this one?
I actually did, yeah. I said dates are tricky because when you set them as a deadline, you're expressing a little bit of a doubt. You usually end up saying something like, to yourself, it better arrive by December 31st or else this stuff doesn't work. So I suggested, don't do it with dates. Just believe and let the universe deliver it speedily because the universe wants to deliver it speedily. Don't put a limit on it.
Well, I have a similar and yet different viewpoint.
Okay.
Which is, so here's a story that happened for me 2 jobs ago. So this is probably about 13, 14 years ago. So I was working at a radio station, and I've mentioned this before. The radio station was sold. I was not downsized. Yeah, I guess that's what the word was. So because they let everybody go. I was just one of the first people. And the particular timing that they let me go was on a Friday at 5:29, and I normally work until 5:30. And I get brought into HR. They tell me, I'm being let go because everybody's going to be let go. And all I could think about in that moment was that my husband and I were about to put an offer on a house the next day. We had an appointment at like 2 o'clock with our realtor, and we were saying, yes, we want to put an offer on the house that we just saw. And so all I could think about was, how is this going to affect putting an offer on the house? So anyway, the next day I'm working with the realtor, and I was still in go mode. My husband, when I called him on my way home from work, I told him what happened. He said, oh, my God, I guess we can't buy the house. I said, are you kidding? No, this is the house. I know it is. We're getting this house. He's like, okay. Like, chill. So we're meeting with the realtor the next day, and we're talking through all the details, and we talked about the offer, the dollars, et cetera. And so we're all ready to go, and he said, so do you have anything else? I said, well, I don't know if this is a big deal, but I said I did lose my job yesterday. Is that going to have any negative impact? And this is how I knew he was the right realtor for me. He went, well, I've dealt with worse, so no, it's not a big deal. And he goes, so your job is to get a job before we close.
Okay.
And I went, okay, so when's closing? And he told me, and I went, okay. So that's a case where I had a physical deadline. I needed to have a job so I could have proof of income because we were getting the house based on both my husband and my income in order to have the mortgage approved. And so I did have a deadline. So I did everything I needed to do to get a job. These were the days of Monster.com, and I threw out 1,000,001, resumes.
Mm-hmm.
And I did get the job, or a job,
Mm-hmm.
and I was happy with it, and it actually was at a significant increase in salary over the one that I had just been let go.
Nice.
So I'm like, okay, this is working in my favor. Now what's interesting is I had set the target that I needed to have a job by, and I'll just make up the date, let's say by March 1st. And I had the job by March 1st. And so that absolutely happened.
Okay.
The problem was the mortgage company then came back and said, well, we need a pay stub
Oh, yes.
before we can let this go through. So that meant it got delayed by 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So we pushed the closing date by 2 weeks, and we closed in the house. We own the house. But the point is, I set the target, date that I had to have a job by a certain date because that, to me, was what the realtor told me. So that's what I projected, and that's what absolutely happened. But I will tell you, it's probably one of the only times in my whole life that I ever remember manifesting something by a specific date.
It makes sense.
But that situation was time boxed in, if you will.
Yeah.
So other things like where I've just projected, I want to make X amount of dollars by a certain date, none of those have ever happened by the date. But I've always gotten the manifestation, it just didn't happen by the date.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense because in this particular case that you were describing, the date was an intrinsic part of what you were asking for. So it had to be included. And
So it's kind of like getting the house and the closing and the job. They kind of were all a package deal.
Right. It was a package deal. It had to come together that way. And it's not ideal to get yourself into that situation, but once there, you just manifest anyway because that's the best you could do. And you did. That was great. It was wonderful that it worked out that way.
It was one of the most fun manifestations I think I've ever experienced.
Yeah. That's one of those stories that you can tell for generations because everybody's going to say, oh, wow, that's exactly what I want to do. But I agree with you. In general, it doesn't really pay to just arbitrarily put a date down. I think that's where the problem comes in. When you do it arbitrarily, you do it with, what date should I pick? I don't know. I think I'll just say, like the end of the month. How's that? And just by saying it that way, it's really clear. You don't really believe it. You're just picking a date.
Yeah, you're right. But I would say that like when I, had my costume manufacturing company, my partner and I had specific deadlines, and so we had hard and fast dates, and there were times that we had no clue how we were going to get something accomplished by then.
Mm-hmm.
But when we had a deadline, we had a deadline, and one of my personal beliefs is I've never missed a deadline in my life, and I certainly don't plan on starting now. And that has been the engine of belief that has, powered me through to making every deadline. So in a way, I use law of attraction with very powerful focusing, and those did have time dates. But things like I want to get pregnant and have a baby by the end of next year, that one doesn't have, unless there's a specific reason. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you put out a goal, there's just not enough juice behind it.
Yeah.
There's not a big enough why, put it that way. There's
Mm-hmm.
not a big enough why it has to happen by that specific date. Where with my house, I had a big why.
Oh, yeah.
As a costume designer, I had a big why to make my deadlines.
Yes.
Because that was my bread and butter. My clients were either going to hate me or love me based on if I did something on time.
Yeah.
So,
oh, yeah. Yeah. And by the way, the whole thing about working on a deadline, even in that situation, it almost doesn't matter whether you actually have a date. And the reason I say that is, I think I've told you this story before, but if I haven't, well, okay, here it is for the first time. When Louise and I moved from Virginia to Connecticut, this was in January 2014, we arrived without owning any vehicles. And there's a whole story involved in that. It's kind of funny in some ways. In fact, actually, maybe I'll tell you a little bit of it because there's some law of attraction too. We had two cars, actually a car and a pickup truck. The car was mine, and I was going to sell it before we moved anyway, just because it was high mileage, and I just didn't want to have to deal with bringing it up here. And the day that I sold it, it ran out of oil. And the guy bought it anyway. He bought it anyway with no oil in it. And I'm thinking, wow. And not only that, he gave me my price. And I was just stunned. I wasn't asking a lot of money for it. This is a car that had like 235,000 miles on it. I was asking $500 for it. But he gave me the $500. I'm thinking, this is great. This is great. Anyway, the day that we moved was a couple days after that. And we had arranged with the mover to have him attach our pickup truck behind the trailer of the van, and that was to basically tow the pickup truck as well, because we were going to drive up in a rented SUV that we could put some extra stuff into, because the van was packed. The moving van was packed door to door. We had to leave a few things behind. That's how bad it was. And so we were also packing stuff into this SUV we were driving up, including the two cats, by the way. Anyway, the day of the move, the mover informs us that it is illegal for him to drag the pickup truck behind the moving van. And we're saying, oh, what the heck do we do now? Because we had no idea how to deal with the pickup truck. Do you know, within 10 minutes of that, one of his crew said, well, I'll buy it. And we said, okay. What do you want to give us for it? Now, I was hoping to drive it up here, drive it around for a little bit, and maybe get $1,000 for it. He said, I'll give you $1,500.
That is an I love this story. This is a fabulous story.
So anyway, we sold the truck to him for $1,500. There's a whole story about how that transaction took place, but I won't go there because it doesn't really fit in nicely with what we're doing here. And then we moved up north. The moving van moved us in the next day. And now all of a sudden we're in the new home and we don't own a car, but we do have a rental car, which of course are very expensive, right, on a day-to-day basis. So we need to get rid of that rental car soon. On top of that, we had basically used up all our spare cash for the move. There wasn't any cash left. And usually you need to put like some money down in order to get a car, especially if you're buying a new car or if you're buying something on payments, right? Mm-hmm. So we went to the dealership and we said, we need 2 new cars, not just one, and we can't afford it. Can you help us?
Hello, I'm here to buy something, but I have no money.
That's pretty much what it was. And now we're a Toyota family. We like Toyotas in part because Toyota saved our lives. That's another story. But I tend to drive Toyota Camrys, so they had us test driving a Camry, and the price of the Camry was almost as much as what we had figured out we could possibly afford for 2 cars. And we said, well, that's really nice, but it's really not going to work. How the heck are we going to do this? And so then they started figuring, okay, so maybe we can mess around with the price of the car because we're going to do it as a lease rather than a purchase. So leases are less expensive. Even the lease price was more than I could afford. And, well, okay, well, how about let's look at a used Corolla for your wife. So we're looking at the used Corolla, and Louise isn't happy with it, and the price is more than we can afford anyway. And when you combine the two together, I mean, they brought the lease price down, so at least was within a possibility of being in range. But you add in the second payment, it was too much, so on and so forth. Finally, we just got him. We said, look, we just can't do this. And so the assistant manager we were dealing with more than just the rep. He had brought the assistant manager in, and they were bound and determined to find a way to get us into 2 cars. And I didn't see how they were going to get us into 1, right? So he goes back, he sharpens his pencil, and comes back about 20 minutes later and says, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you the Camry lease at cost. I said, what? I mean, they basically gave it to us at 40% off. It was ridiculous.
Oh, my goodness.
It was crazy how low that payment got. And even at that price, we still weren't really sure what to do because Louise didn't want the used car that they were trying to put her into. And you put the two together, it was actually about $100 a month more than we thought we could do. But at this point, we were willing to try to do anything just to make it work. So, okay, well, we'll pay the extra $100 a month. We're just not really sure how we'll do it, but somehow we'll do that. Okay. But we didn't really want the used car. And Louise said, I got a headache. I just can't deal with this anymore. Why don't you just, you're already signing up for the lease on the Camry. Why don't you lease the Camry and we'll figure out what to do after that? I said, okay, fine. So she takes off to go back home to the new apartment. And I'm there filling out paperwork, and the assistant manager comes over and says, "Where'd Louise go?" I said, "Well, she went home. I mean, we're just going to go with the Camry because we just can't. She doesn't like the used cars. It just doesn't fit what she wants to do. It doesn't match any of what we're trying to accomplish here." He says, "Call her up." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Because we're going to give her a brand new Corolla at the same price that we were going to sell the used Corolla to her." And
Holy cow.
I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, that's what we're willing to do. We're going to sell that one at cost as well. We're going to give you both of these leases at cost." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because right now our sales are low. We need to add to our sales, and we're just hoping you're going to be long-term customers." So I got Louise on the phone. I said to Louise, "You got to come back." She says, "Why?" I said, "They're going to give you a new Corolla for the same price as the used one." She said, "What?"
Yeah, that's not something you hear every day.
No, that was just, it was so bizarre that it was just unbelievable. So bottom line is, on a day when we needed to move fast into cars that we owned or that we leased or whatever instead of a rental car, we didn't have a particular date when we needed to give up the rental car, but it had to be soon because it was expensive on a day-to-day basis. On a day that we went in with that kind of a need and with no ability to buy anything, we drove off the lot with two brand new cars for the first time in our lives.
That is an amazing story. That is so incredible.
And the best part is, wow. I couldn't have scripted that if you had paid me a Hollywood script writer's fee to write that script, because no one would have believed it.
Oh, my goodness. So that reminds me of a phrase that fits this perfectly, which is whenever, something doesn't manifest the way you think it's going to, the thing that I say is, well, if not this, then better.
Yeah.
Because the house I'm in now was not the first house I looked at. We had started looking a year before, and we were absolutely we found the house. We knew we could afford it. We loved it. It was the best of all the choices we'd looked at, and something fell through on the finance end. Even though we thought it was all going to work, it didn't. And at that point, we were just we're done. We can't take it anymore. We've looked at everything that's on the market that's within our price range, and we love this. And my husband was so despondent, and I was too. But I said to him, based on my life experience, what I have learned is when I think my heart is set on something and it doesn't happen, it's because I'm going to get something equal to or better than. Mm. It's this or more. It's always this or more. And the house, we eventually did buy was twice the size for a little bit more money, but we were both now making more money, and it was a night and day difference in terms of, well, we could afford the other one and it was nice, but this was our dream home. This was our dream home. So I love to say it's either this or better. And you went into the dealership saying, we don't have any money, we really need two cars, and it doesn't sound like you had a whole lot of parameters around it.
No, not really.
You just needed two cars.
Yeah. And I didn't have any doubts, but I also didn't have any beliefs. It was just I give up. Yeah. Fix this for me.
Yeah, and so you got what you wanted and better.
Yeah, far better. I was blown away by it. In fact, that experience is really the experience that made it crystal clear to me that it's silly for me to ask how this is going to happen. Because after that one, there is no way I could have predicted how that was going to happen. That was just bizarre.
Wow.
That was just friggin' bizarre. So now I know, even though I still get drawn to trying to figure out how something's going to happen, the moment I consciously recognize that, I say, oh, yeah, the leases. The two lease cars. Oh, yeah, right. I can't figure it
Yeah.
out. It's not up to me to figure it out. It's up to the universe to figure it out. It's up to source energy to figure it out. It's up to God to figure it out. That's not my job.
I totally get it, because the day job that I have right now, it was better than the one I was, like, I had a job, but I knew that company was building a new location, and it was going to be a huge commute for me, so I knew I was going to eventually have to change jobs. And the manager I worked for, she was very cunning on my behalf, and she was always had my back. And she said, there's some political unrest going on in the company, and now might be a good time for you to look for something new, because I think there's some layoffs coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. And so the job that I got is where I am now, and it was so much better than what I had before, because she had even taught me, she was so wise, she even taught me how to negotiate.
Oh.
And so she said, whenever you go to a new job, you always negotiate a minimum of 10% more than your current salary.
Okay.
So I was like, okay. So at my current job, when we were negotiating price, they told me how much they could offer, and I said, oh, no, that would just be a lateral move for me. And I kind of bluffed, and I said, it wouldn't be worth it to move, to a new job. Well, that part was true. It's just what they didn't know is I really needed a new job.
Right.
The location thing. Well, so, we did a little bit of haggling back and forth, and eventually they gave me 10% more than what I said I was making.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go back to my current boss and I told her how much I was getting, she just laughed. I said, what's so funny? She goes, you didn't understand what I said at all. And I went, but I think I got a good salary. She goes, you did. You got a great salary. She said, but I thought what I was teaching you is to take your base salary and add 10%. And I went, oh, well, I make so much overtime here. I gave I call all the money I make my salary and then added 10% because you did so much better for yourself because you didn't hear me correctly. Now, to me, that's this or better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. And by the way, I'm just thinking about it from the point of view of the person who was interviewing you. That was actually a great technique to use, because what you were essentially saying is, I can take this job or I can leave it. It's not, I am not in any kind of financial difficulty, so you have nothing that you can hold over my head. So if
Exactly.
you like me, if you like the idea of bringing me on, you got to make it worth my while. That's not what you said, but that's what the meaning was behind what you said.
And that was the first time I ever changed jobs where I had an existing job. And it felt so different to me because there was no level of desperation.
Mm.
It was and the company wasn't going to even move for another year.
Mm-hmm.
So I had plenty of time.
Oh,
I didn't have to take the first offer. And I'm like, hey, I'm out there doing it because, my current boss said this is a good move to make. And I'm like, okay, I'm following her lead.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost didn't even take the interview. And I remember telling my husband, I don't think I'm going to take the interview because I don't think they're going to pay enough. And he said, Wendy, just do it.
Just do it.
Because if nothing else, you'll have interview practice. And I went, okay, I'll practice my interview skills. I think I'm pretty good at them anyway, but okay, I'll do it. And, thank goodness I listened to my husband at the time.
Yeah.
And then I used my boss's advice but didn't hear it quite right.
You heard it better.
And I look at all of those pieces and parts and all those components that came together to land me the job that I have. And I know that was law of attraction working on my behalf.
Sure.
And even when they offered me the job and the money was finally, an increase, it pretty much had everything I wanted except I wanted a work-at-home job.
Ah.
But my gut said take the job. So I thought, all right, even though I really want a work-from-home job, I'm going to take it because I feel that's what I'm being guided to do. And everything else looked good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know I've told you this, that within 6 months, I had been paying attention to how many people at my company work from home.
Uh-huh.
So I started asking questions of those that I met that worked from home, like how did you end up being a person who works from home, and under what circumstances did you work that deal? Well, little by little, I put together a business case and presented it to my boss, and he said, okay. And so now for over 10 years, I've been working from home, And now it became everything I had been looking for in a job.
Fantastic. Wow.
So that was like another this or better. It's like I
Yeah.
took it when it was in one state, and it became even better while I've been at the job.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, the whole thing about not feeling the desperation and just feeling confident. I mean, obviously, one great way to do that is to already be employed when you're looking for the other job. But it reminds me of a time when I was quite young. I was in my 30s at the time. I had worked most of the jobs that I got in those early years, I got because I knew how to use a computer. And in that day and age, that was a big deal. Today, everybody knows how to use a computer. But back then, very, very few people knew how to use it, and more people than not were intimidated by them. And plus, the computers weren't nearly as sophisticated as they are today, so there was a lot more opportunity to get frustrated by them, and so on and so forth. So I had been working previous to this job search that I did. I had been working first for a newspaper that we used the computers to put the pages of the newspaper together, and then later, for about 4.5 years, I'd worked for an advertising agency. And I was getting to the point where I needed to leave the advertising agency. It's not like I didn't have a job there. They wanted to keep me for as long as I'd be willing to stay, but I could tell it really was not going to have any kind of a future for me. So I wanted to get out. And I actually quit without having a new job. There's a long story why I did that. I won't get into it because it doesn't really fit up with what we're talking about here. But bottom line is I quit the job without having a job. And I did so in a state of complete confidence that because I had in mind doing a project that was a self-employment thing that didn't work out. But I knew even if the thing didn't work out, I knew how employable I was. So there wasn't any doubt I was going to be able to get work. So sure enough, the self-employment thing didn't work out. And so now I have to go get myself a new job. And they actually wanted me back at the old one, but I just didn't want to go back there. So put together a resume. And again, because my skill was with something that most people didn't know how to do, how to use a computer, I decided to play that up a bit. And the way I did it was I used my graphic design skills that I had learned at the advertising agency, and I put together a little flyer to include with my resume. And the flyer basically had a picture of an old PC, at that point a new PC, at that point in time, and I had like superimposed a picture of a spider web on top of it to make it look like it was covered with dust and so forth, like it was unused. And the headline said something like, let me put your unused machines back to work for you. So it was kind of a cute take on it, right? I sent that out to a bunch of places in the area of where I lived that, they fit nicely with what I'd done. They were like ad agencies or printing houses or newspapers or anything in that kind of general range where there was need for graphic design and so forth. And within a matter of, I sent out probably about 300 of them to different kind of outfits that I just found in the phone book, really. Within 2 or 3 days, I started getting phone calls like crazy. I think I got like 10 phone calls in the first 3 days. And the one that I remember the most is from a guy who had a company in, this was in Connecticut. This guy's company was in Danbury, Connecticut. He calls me up and he says, I got your resume and I got your little flyer that you included with it, and I really don't have a job available. I just wanted to call you up and say that's the best resume I've ever seen because I've never seen anybody include a flyer like that. That was brilliant. I just wanted to congratulate you for that. And I'm thinking, wow.
It definitely caught his attention.
It caught his attention. So, okay. So, I mean, that was a completely unexpected result from sending out resumes to get a job. I did end up getting a job. I ended up being a manager of a production department in a pre-press company in Stanford. And so it all came together very quickly and very easily. But it just goes to show when you go into anything that you're trying to attract, and I knew nothing about law of attraction at the time, but when you go into something you're trying to attract or you're hoping is going to happen, and you do it with a complete feeling of confidence and you just believe in yourself and you believe it's going to happen, it just happens. It just happens no matter what. And stuff happens along with it you don't even expect, like getting a phone call saying, that's the best thing I ever saw.
The thought that just came to me, and I want to say that really this came from the universe or my inner being, because to me it was clearly like out of the blue. My thought was, how sometimes I like to call it popcorn. We have conversation like popcorn. Things just pop up and we just talk about it.
Yeah.
What came to me was there's somebody who's listening either now or in the future that so is needing exactly the conversation we're having today, either because they're looking for a new job or a new house or whatever, and it's the thing that will encourage and inspire them to keep going, and that the thing that they're desiring is really on its way and it's available to them. And not that I've never thought of what we do can inspire and encourage someone, but I really got that as a very specific message, and I just thought I'd put it out there because I would love for the person who hears this now or in the future, and they resonate with that, like, yes, you said those things just for me, to comment on our show page and let us know that we hit the nail on the head and you got what you needed from us.
Oh, that'd be great. Or if you want, just send an email directly to me. My email is walt@loatoday.net. So just send an email. That's the way to get the message directly to me. And yeah, we'd love to hear that. That would be great. I mean, the idea of inspiring people with this show, that just jazzes me like crazy. So, yeah. That'd be terrific.
Because I do think sometimes I'm like, we really sometimes just go off on rabbit trails like nobody's business. But then when I think about it, I'm like, but you never know what somebody's needing to hear.
Yep.
I know that sometimes if I'm in a client session, I'll be talking about specific things, and I'll think to myself, wow, I was like really articulate in sharing that story or that idea. And then the session's nearly over, and we kind of like wrap it up, and I'll hear from my clients that the thing that moved them the most was something that to me was not even part of the therapy, if you will, of what I was trying to teach them. It was some little side story that I just happened to mention, and to them, it just lit up their whole world. And I'm like, well, just goes to show you just can't shoot the rabbit, if you're going down the rabbit trail. It's just follow the rabbit.
No, follow the rabbit. I like that.
Wherever it takes you, just follow the rabbit, because I know for me, I have an intention. I set this many years ago that when I'm working with a client, or in this case, when I'm speaking to hundreds and millions of people, how's that, Walt, for projecting hundreds
I like
of millions?
that. I like that. That's
okay,
good.
So here I'm speaking to hundreds and millions of people. My intention is not that I stick with a plan or a program. Even if we set out to, take a certain topic and we're going to talk about certain things, my intention is that I follow wherever the leading takes me, because I want to touch somebody's heart. I want to make a difference. I want to inspire someone. I want to encourage someone. I want someone to have an aha moment. And I don't know where those places are, but I know Law of Attraction does.
That's true.
And so, sometimes somebody might be listening going, well, holy cow, Walt and Wendy really went off topic with this one today. Not necessarily today. It could be any day.
Well, we often do.
But I truly believe that the things that we say are going to matter for the people who are really wanting to hear.
Yes. Actually, that's something Abraham Hicks says. They say that all the stuff that they put out for people who are ready to receive it. Well, it's the same thing. It's the same concept, really.
So if somebody's listening and they're like, oh, that's all hogwash, I don't need to listen to them, they're silly, nothing resonates with me, then they're not open to hearing what we have to share. And or we're just not a match right now. And that's okay, too.
That's okay, too. Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the things that I'm enjoying and appreciating about this group that becomes the topic for the day, this Facebook group, because the stuff that comes out of it is just all over the board. And some of it is not stuff that interests me, but it clearly interests other people. And there's other stuff that does interest me, and I participate in it. And it's good either way. Either way, it's good. So anyway, let's look at the next one. What was that? Go ahead. No, I was just going to go to the next post. Did you have a comment on that previous thing?
Well, I was just going to say I had never been a real avid Facebook user, but recently, every now and then, it just kind of calls to me, and I'll read through my news feed, and it's amazing. On the days I feel called, like I just have an compelling desire to go do it, that will be the day that I will see posts that just really enrich me, or they warm my heart, or they cause me to feel really connected to one of my Facebook friends. And so to me, that's one of the benefits of Facebook. I don't feel like I have to see it every day. I don't have a discipline about it. It's really just a fun communication social media tool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know?
I agree.
And I love how I allow law of attraction to guide me to it on days that there will be things there that will match either what my energy is in the moment or the things that I'm looking for, which actually would also be the energy I have in the moment.
Yep, that's sure. That makes total sense. And really, that's what I think most people do. I mean, I'm not a religious every single day Facebook person. Some days yes, sometimes no, sometimes I just forget about it. But lately, I've just been doing it because of what we're doing with the show, so it kind of focused me in that way. But like, here's another example of somebody who had a motivational along the line of what you're talking about, because she is somebody who is brand new to the whole law of attraction thing. So she watched The Secret for the first time and was asking for other must-watch suggestions, another open-ended question. And she got a lot of answers, as you can imagine. If you had seen that one, what would you recommend? Is there anything that you recommend to somebody as like a really good thing to see?
I think I would immediately say start watching YouTubes, even though a lot of them doesn't have a lot of visual stuff, but start looking up Abraham Hicks and listening or watching the YouTubes having to do with Abraham Hicks. Because if you really like The Secret, then Abraham Hicks will take The Secret and, like, amp it up a gazillion degrees.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I also, when I posted my little response to it, I suggested the TED Talk by Sean Aker. Even though he's not an LOA teacher, so much of the stuff that's in there mirrors it, LOA perfectly. So that was my suggestion. But I like the idea of anything Abraham Hicks on YouTube, because that's exactly what I did. When I first learned about The Secret and wanted to start reaching out to learn more, I was doing Google searches and so forth and ended up discovering Abraham Hicks through YouTube primarily. And that's where I got my Abraham Hicks education, really. So, yeah, I'm totally on board with that one. Because you can get a lot there.
And not everybody knows that Rhonda Byrne, who is the person who put The Secret together, she had been sitting in Abraham workshops for quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
And wanted to take that message and, build upon it. So it's like Abraham Hicks was kind of the originator behind The Secret, but not everybody knows that.
That's right.
So I think it's a perfect tie-in when somebody says, I've just done The Secret, what's next for me? It's like, dive into Abraham Hicks, and boy, you will really, really get a great education on law of attraction in a very practical way.
And in fact, we only have a couple of minutes left, but in fact, if I remember correctly, you went on one of the Abraham Hicks's Alaska cruises, right?
I did in 2009.
Well, that was the same kind of cruise that she went on. When Rhonda Byrne came to the Abraham Hicks workshop, it was an Alaska cruise, and that's where she interviewed a lot of the people that appeared on The Secret on that cruise.
Oh, I did not know that. Very
interesting stuff. So, yeah, Abraham Hicks has played a huge role in it, no doubt about it, and they deserve a lot of credit. So we've got about little under 1.5 minutes left. During that time, I want to remind people, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast, please do so. It's a great way to make sure you don't miss any of the episodes, because we're doing twice daily plus once on Sundays. So that's 11 shows a week. And you can get a lot of daily doses of happy that way. So subscribe to the podcast by going to loatoday.net. You can see subscribe buttons there. You can also subscribe on your iPhone by going to the iTunes store or to the podcast software that's built into the iPhone, either one. And just do a little search with the magnifying glass for LOA Today. Will pop up in either place, and you can hit the subscribe button there. And if you're on an Android phone like a Samsung or a Google or whatever, you can subscribe through the Google Play Store. Again, doing a search on LOA Today. So please do subscribe. And Wendy, if someone wants to get a little private counseling, that's where you come into the picture. How can they reach you?
I would love to have people visit my website at wendydillard.com. And if you're interested in working with me privately, both my phone number and my email address are readily available on the site, and you could contact me through either method.
Sounds great. Wendy, we've done it again. We've had another completely off-the-wall topic and turned it into something cool. This is great. Let's do it again tomorrow.
It was fun. I'll be here.
And we hope you all join us as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye now.